Steelers Nation, let's ride. The Steelers have signed Russell Wilson to a 1-year deal for the vet men to be their quarterback for 2024. Interesting addition. Over the past couple weeks, we've been breaking down all type of free agency potential fits on the channel, but I've stayed away mostly from the quarterback conversation just because of how toxic it had gotten. But I wanted to get on here and give my thoughts to you guys. I know I see a lot of the comments on previous videos. Y'all hitting me up about Russ. I really appreciate the love, support for the channel, all that good stuff. So I'll jump on here, give you guys kind of a rundown of what I think of him as a player. 3-4 days ago, I dropped a full scouting report on Russell Wilson. It's incredibly in depth. Basically goes over pros, cons, how he fits within the Arthur Smith offense, all that stuff. So if you want a lot of detail, that's where you need to head at SteelersNow.com. But I think it's pertinent for me to give my thoughts on here on the channel as well. Just kind of some cliff notes. Again, for the vet men, man, Russ has value for that type of contract, right? Obviously the things didn't work out in Denver, and we can get into some of the reasons why that is the case. But the Steelers were always going to add a quarterback in the offseason. We didn't know what type of player were going to bring in, whether that was going to be just competition for Kenny Pickett, where they were going to go try to get an established starter. That's probably the bucket that I would put Russell Wilson in. They can say whatever they want as far as, this is a competition. They're going to leave it open. Maybe Kenny beats him out. I do not think that Russell Wilson would have signed before free agency even began just to hold a clipboard. That's just my opinion. It sounds like Cam Hayward, Mike Tomlin were both strong advocates, according to NFL Network, in terms of bringing him to the table. So we'll see how it goes, man. It's a move that I think is exciting because obviously Russ has a Hall of Fame type of resume. Some of the things that he did, when he was in Seattle, electric playmaking ability, all that stuff's really exciting. So we'll get into kind of his scouting report here. Just before we get started, please make sure that you like the video, subscribe, drop me a comment, help this video blow up. It helps me bring more content to you guys on a regular basis. Start with the strengths for Russ. Really, just when I went back and watched the tape, I watched about 6 games for 2023. And really, the two things that really stand out still, the arm. He does still, the arm is still intact, man. It's at least 90% of what it was in his prime. The two things that Russ has always done an incredible job of: push the ball down the field vertically, throw the deep ball, and then the playmaking ability. And you even saw those things last year in Denver. If you look at the deep ball metrics, they tailed off a little bit last year. He averaged a career low average depth of target. They didn't have as much sustainable success, but there was still, just flashes of excellent ball placement. The dude can put touch. I mean, the patented moon balls go up to the sky. I tweeted out a bunch of clips on my Twitter account, but it's not difficult to imagine those being completed to George Pickens, right? This is a player who, has the ability to push the ball vertically, is going to give Pickens plenty of chances to go up, win those 50-50 balls, get vertical, brings explosive plays, all those things. And even then, Russ just has a preference to play out of structure. The playmaking ability when things aren't there, he has the ability to, scramble out of the pocket, makes things happen with his legs. I do think if you look at the numbers, Russ last year, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He finished around the 20th mark in EPA per play and success rate. Those things were the uptick in production was really a testament, I think, to him being in better condition. I think he came in a little bit slimmer. He looked more mobile, more agile, which is not always the case, for a guy who, is in his mid 30s now, to actually see an uptick in his mobility. But it was obvious, even Sean Payton mixed in. There were a couple times where they did design runs for him. Now, obviously, those things are not going to be in his bag or in his toolkit for very much longer, given his age, but he still has the ability to pick up yards with his legs. He can pick up critical third downs out of structure, all those things. And then once he gets out of the pocket, that's really where he's most dangerous. Extending the play, he's a guy who likes to hold on to the football, but extends the play, can push the ball down the field. He's a guy who's going to provide you explosive plays. Now, we can also get into some of the negatives to his game, and then I'll kind of tell you a little bit about my thoughts on his fit in Arthur Smith's offense and the things that he'll need to do to kind of make that marriage work between offensive coordinator and quarterback. And really, the struggles for Russ are really the same as they've always been. He just has a very unique style of play, and there's not really anyone like him in NFL history because he's always been elite at a couple things: pushing the ball down the field, throwing the deep ball, and the out of structure playmaking ability. All of those things with his athleticism have been things that have made him an incredibly great player over the course of his career. Now, if you're wondering why things haven't worked or why his game hasn't necessarily aged as well as other, pure pocket passers that maybe hit their peak in their 30s, it's just because he still has the same weaknesses that he did when he was 25. He's a guy who, again, likes to hold on to the football. He brings some pressure on himself. He takes a lot of stacks. Although last year, the average depth of target really decreased because Sean Payton, I think, was drilling into him that he needed to get the ball out. Saw a lot of check downs to the running backs. Was that good or bad? I think it's really in the eye of the beholder. But there is a loss. I mean, he's not the same athlete that he was at 25. I don't want to get that, like, make that any qualms about it. This is a guy who isn't the elite athlete that he once was, even if he can still do the out of structure playmaking stuff when he needs to. The other thing is, Russ has always had a habit of just turning down open throws underneath, even in quick game. Although I thought his quick game stuff was better than I anticipated it would be in Denver last year. In quick game, he will turn down some quick throws, even when the receivers have the leverage advantage on defensive backs. He'll turn them down because he is a big game hunter. He will opt to turn down throws to try to push the ball down the field. And sometimes that results in good plays, and then sometimes that results in sacks. So he's a guy that really needs a strong offensive line who's going to be able to hold up in protection on a consistent basis. The other noticeable drawback with Russ, and it's always been a thing, is he's short. I mean, I don't know how else to put that, but his height prohibits him from seeing over offensive and defensive linemen. So that's why you don't see a lot of targets in the middle of the field. Now, if you just go back and look at completions, I think this dude had something like 18 intermediate completions. Don't quote me because I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but he just doesn't use the middle of the field, and he never has. So, that's always going to be a thing with him. When the pocket starts to compress and he starts to feel pressure, he's going to try to escape the pocket, make plays with his legs, make plays out of the pocket because that's where he can actually see. And because of that, because of his lack of willingness and his height prohibiting from him going to the middle of the field, full field reads. So, like, for example, if you're running a smash concept to the right side of the field, normally the full field read would have some type of dig or in route or in breaker working to his vision. Full field reads are just not really in his bag because by the time he's going to get to that third read in the progression, like, the defensive line has already kind of compressed the pocket and he's not going to be able to see that guy anyway. So it's a lot of half field read stuff with him. And just with the way the NFL has, really evolved over the past 5 years, really since the Mahomes era, you're seeing a lot of too high. So a lot of teams play too high against him. They don't want him to be able to throw the go balls, the stuff that he's really good at. So they play too high safeties and try to make him check the ball down and actually work over the middle. That's where some of the struggles come in. Now, this is kind of the thoughts on the pairing between Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith. If you're looking for a negative, and this is probably the biggest negative for me in terms of the signing, is that we're probably not going to get to see the full Arthur Smith offense. Like, if you're someone who's really high on his offense, I did a breakdown on my channel. I think Arthur Smith does a lot of things well. You're not going to get to see the full complement of his stuff just because Russ isn't going to be able to hit some of the stuff over the middle. He's just not going to. And you can't, at this point in his career, so many offensive coordinators have tried to coach him to do that. It's just not going to happen. Now, I will say this, a lot of the stuff that Arthur Smith really believes in actually fits Russell Wilson's game. So, for example, the deep shots off play action. So Russ can do that. You do the two-man route concepts, you do the max protection stuff, throw the ball down the field. That's what he wants to do. If you look at some of the numbers from, like, when he was in Tennessee and having all that success with Tannehill, a lot of the deep shots off play action, Tannehill, I think, averaged about 10 yards average depth of target off play action. That's what Smith wants to do. He wants to lean on the run game, a lot of zone, outside zone, wide zone stuff, play action off of that. All the bootlegs and the naked keepers to the perimeter, Russ can do that. Russ has really good accuracy on the run. He will find guys. And again, you have the threat of him taking off with his legs too. So that stretches the defense horizontally. And then vertically, he can stretch the defense with his arm because he still has the arm strength to throw it 60 yards down the field and hit somebody in the bucket. So those things will need to be heavy, heavy staples of this offense. Now, the other thing is Arthur Smith did a little bit of it with Atlanta, but you're going to have to do a lot of gun play action stuff with him. So Russ, because he's not a pure progression drop back passer who's going to read the full field, you have to make sure that you're implementing play action in the gun. And that's the important part of that is, one, if you do play action out of the gun, it slows down the drop and allows receivers to get deeper. So you can take more deeper shots. And Also, it slows the pass rush down. That way, every time you're in the gun, they know like they can't just tee off on him on, okay, this is a three-step drop. They can't just tee off. They don't know when he's going to be back in the pocket to hit his drop. So there are advantages to that. You can expect to see, I mean, he is a guy who can throw, crossers, but really what you're going to want is Yankee concepts, two-man route concepts, deep throwing the ball deep off play action. And then when they do have to go quick game, he operates best quick game when he's in empty. So that's a way to make him a little more decisive. I saw him turn down more throws when he wasn't in empty because he did show me a lot pre-snap in terms of identifying leverage and identifying different mismatches. Sean Payton did give him some control at the line of scrimmage, and I think he will need that in Pittsburgh as well because he's a guy who's seen a lot. I mean, this guy's been a vet for 13 plus years now or whatever. He's seen a lot of coverages. There's not anything that defensive coordinators are going to throw at him that's going to surprise him. So use his mind to, your advantage. And also like the empty stuff spreads defenses out. So I think that is advantageous for a quarterback that's been around for this long. And I just thought he was really comfortable in that. When they go to the pure drop back game, you're going to want to probably go with more half field reads, like I said. So a lot of like sail concepts, things that work one side of the field where he can go one or alert 1 to 2 to check down or 1 to 2 to check down. All right. And that's going to help him get the ball out on time, avoid those negative plays for sacks. Russ does a good job taking care of the ball. That's something you have to appreciate about his game. So it makes sense, right? Like if the Steelers, their whole philosophy, just with where they are in terms of their roster construction, their window, and all that stuff. They've got an aging defense. They have a bunch of superstars over there. TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Alex Highsmith, guys playing at the peak of their career. They want to take advantage of that window, and they feel like the best way to do that is to construct a ball control offense, score just enough points off explosives, and then play extremely good defense, and then hopefully that's enough to at least make them competitive against these AFC teams that have loaded quarterbacks. Now, whether that works or not, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely reason to be skeptical just because, I mean, it's a quarterback league and Russ is no longer the type of player that is going to elevate an offense. With that being said, if the run game is elite and the defense is elite, Russ will be good enough to take them to the playoffs, and we'll see what happens from there. Now, those two things absolutely have to happen. So some of the things we talked about in the free agency videos, they have to go out and get a center who is capable of operating the wide zone system. They're probably going to have to get an upgraded tackle because, like I said, you've got to give Russ plenty of time to throw in the pocket because he's a guy who holds the ball for 3 seconds. That's just what he does. So all those things I think are notable. I'm very interested to see in, how everything looks, but the run game is increasingly important. I don't want to dismiss that. If you look at when he was at his peak in Seattle, they had an incredibly efficient run game. The run game numbers have to be efficient because he's not all that efficient as a passer, if that makes sense. He hunts for explosives, so he's going to provide you the big plays. You need the run game to be incredibly efficient. Draw those safeties up. If you can force some single high stuff, he will make you pay over the top. I think, again, George Pickens, by far the best fit. I mean, if you were constructing a receiver to fit Russ's game, George Pickens is going to be that type of player. I mean, he's a guy who can win with speed. He can win with contested catch ability. Go look up on YouTube after you get done with this video. You can go look up all those highlight-worthy Cortland Sutton catches that he had over the past year. I mean, some just spectacular touchdowns and stuff. It's easy to imagine George Pickens in those scenarios. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, they're going to need an efficient run game, work heavy play action stuff off of that. But, that's the thing. They want to run more play action. I think Russ is a good fit for that. The Arthur Smith fit in general with the middle of the field usage and the things that he prioritizes in that area of the field, it's not a good fit with Russ. So you're going to have to make that work around his skill set. But I mean, that's really with any quarterback, right? You want to play to your quarterback strength. You can see it however you want to see it, positive, negative, whatever. But it's going to be a heck of a week, man. I'm really excited. We got the legal tampering period starting in just a matter of minutes right now. I'm going to try to bring you guys as much content as I possibly can. Again, like, subscribe, drop me a comment. Y'all want to see a film room on Russ? If you want to see a film room on Russ, drop me a comment, all that stuff. Share the video. If I can get time and, today's not too crazy, I would love to put out some stuff to kind of illustrate my thoughts, pros, negatives, all that stuff to help you guys get a better understanding of who is likely going to be starting at quarterback for the Steelers next year. But as always, I really appreciate y'all's support. Enjoy the rest of your week. Happy Monday. Peace and love.